Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much.
This meeting is being recorded.
And I'm going to quickly share my screen so that I can show everybody what I'm going to be doing. I'm hoping that everybody can see my screen at the moment.
Yes, we can.
So this is just an introduction on effective CV writing. So basically what a CV is, obviously you write your CV, you attach it to the application and you send it. But then sometimes you don't ever hear back from an application, which is obviously the problem, because every job vacancy will attract so many applicants. So we're going to tackle today of how to write an effective CV that will make hope to get you through to interview. And then that's where you really come your own. So just a little bit about me. So I was obviously born in Sierra Leone but raised here in the UK. For those of you who don't know, I've got over 7 years experience within the recruitment industry, but I also have a bit of experience from my degree and early working career in a background in film and television. It's quite a strange transition that I made into recruitment. After leaving university, I joined onto a graduate program for enterprise rent-a-car. That was only for around sort of 10 months to a year. It wasn't really the best career kind of prospects, which I noticed within probably the first 3 months of joining. So then I looked at what skills have I learned during university and also what skills have I learned during my 10 months, a year at Enterprise Rent-a-Car, and I thought they align quite nicely into the world of recruitment. So then I've been now doing recruitment for the past 7 years. I was 1 year in one recruitment agency, and then I've now been in another recruitment agency for the past 6 years. And luckily enough, now moved to a senior position within the company. And my passions really lie within community development, especially for young ethnic minority groups, as well as youth empowerment and leadership as well. So that's a little bit about me. That photo was when I was at my friend's wedding back in 2020. So that suit jacket unfortunately doesn't fit me anymore because lockdown. But anyway, so the aims and objectives of today is by the end of the session, we should be able to recognize the importance of writing a good CV, recognize the importance of also proofreading for spelling, punctuation, grammar, and also meaning. Proofread, I guess, what a bad CV looks like. And like, you know, I'm not going to really show any examples because not many people look at a CV and think that's a bad CV if you don't know what you're looking for. Like for me, I look at hundreds of CVs a month. So I know what a bad CV looks like. So for me to then show you guys and say what a bad CV is, it's probably quite irrelevant. What you need to focus on in is how to write a good CV. So some of the points that I'm going to talk through will hopefully reach those objectives, and also identify your own skills and personal qualities. Now, just to kind of start off, it's really difficult writing about yourself on a CV because you don't want to come across too arrogant. You don't want to come across too like you know everything. But a CV needs to be sharp to the point so that whoever's reading it can grasp what they need from looking at that CV for less than a minute. It's just like if you're going to go to a shop and buy a book, you look at the back of the book to gain an idea as to what the book is like in order for you to then say, I'm going to buy this book. Or if you want to put it in, let's say, a TV advert, that TV advert is 30 seconds. So it's one of those things where if that TV advert hasn't captured you within that period of time, you're going to probably you're not going to want to worry about that product. It's the same with a CV. It's the same principles that apply. So a CV is all about you. CVs are an opportunity to show a potential employer why you are the ideal candidate for that job. The CV doesn't get you the job, the interview gets you the job. But the CV is the first thing that they see in order for them to open up that door to allow you in for an interview. So you've already gone past that first stage. Now, as a candidate, when you're applying for a job, your candidate experience and candidate journey starts from the moment you send your application. The moment you send your application to that employer is the moment your candidate journey starts with that company. So you need to make sure that your first impression, even though they've never seen you, never heard you, that first impression is that CV and covering letter. And first impressions are always key. We all know that saying, first impression is key. You will never turn up to an interview in your pajamas. Funny enough though, last week, I had somebody turn up to a video interview and they were in their dressing gown. It was a really, really bad first impression. I didn't go ahead with that interview. I told him, I'm sorry, this interview is not going ahead. So it's one of those things, a CV is your first interaction with that company. So it needs to be spot on. So a good CV will stand out from the crowd. It will draw the attention of the relevant skills, experience, any potential achievements that you've done, whether that's academic, whether that's something within your previous work experience, and also the potential you have for this particular job. And a lot of CVs that I see during my day-to-day work, they might not be the complete correct candidate for that job, but I can see there's something in that CV where I think, oh, that's interesting. Let me pick up the phone to them, speak to them about the potential job vacancy we're advertising and see if they have the potential to move and grow into that role. So don't be disheartened if you think, oh, there's loads of experience and skills that I don't have. It's what skills and experiences do you have that you can transfer into a new role, or you'll have the potential to move into that position. A good CV will also create an impression on the employer. So they hopefully won't turn you down for an interview. Everybody has potential. Everyone has more skills than they think that they have. You just need to be able to articulate that correctly on the CV. And also, everyone can actually write a good CV because it's not a novel. It's a 2 or 3 page document about you. You are the only person that knows everything about you, what you've done and the experiences that you have. So everybody should be able to write a good CV. And obviously how to write a good CV is a really, really simple structure, okay? Now, for some people who have already got work experience, you will most likely want to put your work experience towards the top of your CV. But of course, you'll need to start off with your contact information. So your name, your city that you live in. I personally wouldn't put your full address on the CV. I would have put something like Bristol and then the first part of your postcode. The reason being is because sometimes when you're applying for job vacancies, they go onto the public internet domain and it's all of your public information. It's all of your personal information, your full name, your address, your email address, your telephone number. Try not to do that. So just put the city that you live in and maybe the postcode location of where you are. So whether that's Bristol BS2 or Bristol BS4, you don't need to put your full address on the CV. Of course, you need to include a contact information, telephone number, and it's going to be the best telephone number for you, the one that's most accessible. I know some people have 2 phones, some people have Salon WhatsApp number attached to their WhatsApp, the best number for them to call you on. But obviously people don't really use landlines anymore. So I'll probably say just leave that out. And of course, an email address. Now the email address needs to be a professional sounding email address. When email first came around, I was in school. So we used to create these funny email addresses that had nothing to do with our names. It needs to be professional. It needs to include your name. And it needs to be a professional sounding email address as well. That puts me off straight away. If it's like, I don't know, I've seen some ones that says sexybaby123@hotmail.com. That's not good. So that's the top of the CV. So all of your contact information. You also need to include your professional profile. And I'll go into that a little bit more about what professional profile is at the top. And then you need to summarize your education and experience in chronological order as well. So make sure that it's in time order. So if it's going to be summarizing your work experience and your work history, your most recent job needs to be at the top, and then it goes further down. Some people spend 5 years, 10 years in one company. I would say try not to make your work experience history on your CV longer than maybe 3 previous employers. If you're going for a job where it's a professional working job, you don't need to say that you worked in the Travelodge Hotel back in 1999. It's irrelevant. So all of those irrelevant work experiences, remove them from the CV, Just focus and concentrate on the most recent experiences that are relevant to the job that you're applying for. You need to also highlight your skills, and you also need to include any of your qualifications that you have. So whether that's GCSEs, O levels, GCE, I don't really know how it works. I know there's a lot of people who have got previous qualifications back in Sierra Leone, but any UK qualifications are really, really important as well. If you've done any IT courses, any online courses, anything like that that's relevant to the job that you're applying for is the best to highlight on the CV. It also needs to be relevant. I mentioned just a minute ago, it needs to be relevant to the job that you're applying for. So you can tweak and alter your CV for every different application that you have. That's a really important thing. Don't just create a generic CV for every type of job. Tailor that CV specifically to the job that you're applying for. Mind your language. Ensure that it's very clear, it's concise. It's not, it's professional sounding language. Pay attention to the detail, double check and triple check everything on your CV to make sure that the spacing is correct, the grammar is correct. We all use Microsoft Word. It all has spell check. It all has grammar checking. So use that. Keep it short. Now, some people say no longer than 2 pages. I disagree, okay? There's nothing wrong with having a CV that's slightly longer than 2 pages. When it gets to over maybe 4 pages, it's a bit of an issue, okay? So I disagree with having a CV at 2 pages. I read CVs all the time that are longer than 2 pages. It doesn't faze me at all. But you don't need war and peace, and you don't need to waffle too much on your CV with lots of irrelevant information. Be accurate, and also you don't have to include your photograph on your CV. The reason why I say that is because when somebody's reading a CV and they see a photograph, they already have some form of judgment in their head as to what this person's going to be like. If you add a photo to that, that already enhances that judgment, okay? Now, I hate to say it, but we are not from this country. And if we put if I put our photos on our CVs, some employers, although we are living in 2022, can have, you know, negative thoughts against our own people. So keep the photo off your CV. Allow the CV to speak for itself instead of putting a face to the name of the CV already. And also include interesting hobbies. Now, some people have got some really strange hobbies, okay? Some of the CVs that I've seen, some really obscure, strange hobbies. Try and keep it quite normal. Working out, going to the gym, socializing with friends, eating out at restaurants, if you play for a sporting club, anything like that, something interesting, something that's a little bit normal. I've seen some really obscure hobbies and it kind of puts me off. I think that's a bit strange, but that's my own personal opinion. So that's how you would construct a CV. Now, if you are somebody who's pretty much starting off their working career, I would say to put your education and your certifications and any qualifications to the top of your CV before any work experience, because that experience in education is probably what's going to get you that job, not necessarily the work experience previously before. If you're going to be applying for a senior staff nurse, for example, in a different trust, in a different city, you would put your work experience as the most relevant thing towards the top of your CV. If you're applying for a junior nursing position, you'll probably put your qualifications to say you studied for 4 years at such and such college or such and such university studying nursing. That's the most relevant. So you'll tailor your CV and move it around in order for you to make sure you capture the most relevant information first of all, okay? And these are some of the skills that you should definitely mention on your CV. It's probably the most important thing. Active listening, communication, computer skills, so being computer literate, customer service. And customer service comes in all sorts of forms, okay? Even if you work in a hospital, you don't realize you're doing customer service, but you are. You have to deal with patients, you have to deal with family members, you have to deal with suppliers, you have to deal with porters, all sorts. So customer service isn't just about working in a shop and serving a customer that's buying something. Customer service is you're offering great service to the people who are using it or buying it. That's what I mean by customer service. Interpersonal skills, leadership, if you have any, management skills, again, if you have any management experience, problem solving, time management, and also transferable skills. And these points here can be highlighted and expanded on any covering letter that you might need to write for that job application as well. So these are some of the 10 best skills to include on your CV. There are obviously others. That will be down to you as a personal choice if you wanted to do so and to add those in to your CV. So these are some of quite interesting sort of facts. So recruiters don't spend long looking at a CV. And I would agree with that. I probably spend no more than 30 seconds looking at a CV. I'm not reading the CV word for word. What I'm looking at is education, their work experience. I'm looking at the length of time they've spent with one employer. I'm looking at, for example, grammar, spelling. I skim through the CV and I think, I like the look of this CV. And when I make contact with that person over the phone, email, for example, actually over the phone, that gives me time to go through their CV in a bit more detail on that telephone screening call. So I don't need to spend 5 minutes reading a CV word for word, whether or not if I want to progress them through to the next stage of CV screening or telephone screening. I don't spend long looking at CV, and it's very true. I work in an office with about 50 other recruitment consultants. We all do the same. And also, this is another point. A lot of CVs are discarded because they're more than 2 pages long. Like I said, I disagree with that. It's fine for a CV to be longer than 2 pages. Sometimes if you've got an extensive work history, if you are going for quite high paying jobs or quite high level roles, your CV will be longer than 2 pages. If it's your first entry level role, then probably keep it to 2 pages. But if you're somebody who's got a lot of experience, it's okay. We understand. And over 50% of candidates believe it is necessary to lie in order to get an interview. That's a really, really, really bad thing to do on a CV. Do not lie, because if you go to an interview and you get found out, it's just going to be so embarrassing. So don't even try and lie on your CV to say you've done this, this, and this. And I've heard so many stories from loads of uncles to say, I was always the top of my class back home in Sierra Leone. Probably not, because it's just a running joke that they have. But just don't lie on your CV, because you can get found out and it's not very good. And also the final thing is really, really, really important. Employers have rejected CVs based on something they have found online, okay? Now, we're all in the digital world nowadays. Everybody's on Facebook, everybody's on Instagram, people using Twitter, people commenting, sharing, liking everything. Be careful what you post on your social media pages. Because if somebody was to Google your name, or somebody was, for example, to find you on your social medias and notice that there are some really obscure, controversial things that you're talking about, sharing and stuff like that, they will discount your CV. And it's the same. I've done it so many times as well. I'll give you an example. There was a young person applying for a trainee recruitment consultant position with our firm. I Googled his name, and his name came up on an article because during lockdown 2020, he threw a party and had a £10,000 fine. And a newspaper contacted him to gain a story from him. And he responded to the newspaper with a story basically saying that he didn't really care about COVID. He didn't think it was real. So I threw a party with all of my friends. I instantly discounted that, because that's a really negative thing to be saying in a world where a lot of people were affected by that. So I instantly discarded his CV because I found that online. And there was just something about his CV. I just thought something's not right here. But these are skills that I've picked up over the years to notice these little things on the CV. So yeah, please be careful when you are using social media and all of that sort of stuff as well, because it's all out there in the public. Anybody can find it. So please do be careful. And a lot of employers are starting to do that now. So what you also need to do with your CV is you need to think and put yourself in an employer's shoes. Okay, so these are some of the questions you need to be asking yourself when you're writing a CV or when you're filling out an application form. So the one of them is, why should I choose you for an interview? What skills do you have to bring to the role? What skills do you, sorry, I duplicated that. What have you learned from work experience and how has this prepared you for the job? What type of person are you? And how will your qualifications and studies help you in the job? So you need to stand in the employer's shoes and think about these sort of questions so you can reflect that on your CV, in your personal statement, and also in your covering letter if you need to write one as well. Now, covering letters, I'm going to go on to that shortly, and I'll explain that in just a minute. What covering letters I think are becoming a bit obsolete and a bit outdated at the moment. So these are some of the things that you should definitely not do on your CV, okay? Don't include any salary information or the expectations that you have for salaries. That is all discussed during the interview process, okay? You probably wouldn't have applied for a job vacancy if you knew the salary that you're expecting doesn't match what you're looking for. So we don't need to include any salary information on your CV. It's pointless. The reason why I say that is, let's say, for example, you send your CV and the salary for the job is 50,000, but your expectations are 60,000, you're instantly going to be discounted because your expectations are too high. So you've already shot yourself in the foot there. Don't include information which may be viewed negatively. So for example, if you failed any exams, any of your grades that you've got, you don't have to put your grades on your CV. Maybe for your degree, yes, but if it's like GCSEs or A levels or any kind of earlier education, you don't really need to include your grades on there. If of course they're A stars, A's, B's, fine, put them in. But if they're D's and E's and F's, just leave them out overall. And also don't lie. I've marked that in red. Don't lie on your CV. Don't say you have 20 years experience doing one thing when you've only been doing it for 1 year. You'll be found out and it's so embarrassing. You don't need to include referees' names or contact numbers, references. Just put that they are available on request. Usually references don't get contacted. Now so with references, legally, a company cannot contact a previous employer to find out how you performed in that role. The only thing that they can do is go to their HR team and say, how long did this person work here for? And also, what was their job title and position? They cannot give you a reference to say, yes, this person was good at this person was bad at that. Legally, they can't do it. So there's no need for you to put a previous employer's name and contact details on your CV. Just put references available on request. And references are only asked for after you've accepted a job offer when you're completing the onboarding forms. If somebody asks you for a reference beforehand, just say references will be provided if a job offer is made. Also include all of the jobs that you've had. You don't need to include all of the jobs you've had since school. I said this earlier, just the relevant ones in the most recent years, okay? If your work history is 20 years, bring that down to 10 years, maybe even 8 years, okay? Because 8 years is a really long time of work experience. Don't use unnecessary jargon or acronyms or technical terms unless if it's like a vacancy or a job that uses that sort of stuff. If you are going to use any acronyms, make sure the first time you mention that acronym, you make sure you put the full expansion of it, and then you can use the acronym afterwards. And also don't include a photo unless if it's requested. But to be honest with you, I have not come across any employers within the last 8 years that I've worked in recruitment to say that you need a photo on your CV. So if they ask you for that, there's something a bit fishy and dodgy about that company, okay? So your personal statement. Now, personal statements are quite an interesting thing because a personal statement kind of sets the scene for who you are as an individual, okay? The majority of personal statements, in my opinion, are pretty much the same. They pretty much have the same sort of content. So there's an example at the bottom of what a personal statement might be. I'm a committed, caring and friendly physiotherapist with great passion for helping people of all ages. I have previous experience in supporting a variety of patients ranging from children suffering from development problems to adults and the elderly affected by and recovering from injuries and so forth and so forth. So that's your personal statement. Now, a personal statement is an introduction as to who you are, okay? It needs to be a really concise paragraph or a summary which details what you can bring to the job or the company. Then you can continue expanding that personal statement in a covering letter that you send with your CV, okay? And this goes at the very top of your CV, just after your contact information. It's your opportunity at this point to really capture that particular employer's attention with that personal statement. Now, I would probably say that personal statements can be written in a very unique way. I'd always try to bring a little bit more flair and a little bit more, what word am I looking for? A little bit more kind of substance to it, and a little difference to it as well, as opposed to maybe starting with, I am this, I am great at this. Sometimes it might be nice to say, after working in such and such industry for such a long time, you starting a different way, just to make it a little bit different and stand out from an employer, for an employer. Now, I'm always happy to look at people's personal statements and also anyone's CV for any tips, any hints. If you need me to kind of not rewrite it, but point you in the right directions of how to go, then I'm more than happy to do that as well. And then going on to the covering letter. So the covering letter, now, because I work in a recruitment firm and I am in charge of recruiting and hiring people for our company, I don't ask for covering letters. The reason why I don't ask for covering letters is because all of the information I need is on a CV. And the way I do my recruitment is all through telephone conversations and screening calls. That's how I find out about the person. So although somebody's covering letter can be really, really good, and it is a good thing to send with it as well, because you can expand a little bit more from your CV. It really does depend on what type of organization you're going for. A lot of larger companies tend to ask for a covering letter. Smaller companies, maybe less than 100 employees, maybe less than 200 employees, tend not to. They have a little bit more flexibility with one-to-one contact with a potential candidate. So the larger organizations, maybe like the NHS, or maybe like a really large accountancy firm or a large law firm, they will probably ask for a covering letter. But covering letter is really important because they are not just looking at the context of the covering letter, they're also looking at your writing skills as well, how you communicate what you're trying to say across to somebody else. And the covering letter is a little bit of a mini test as well. So it goes alongside your CV when applying for a job. It also acts as like an introduction and helps to sell yourself and sell your application to that employer. It adds context to your CV, so you're able to expand on what you haven't been able to expand on your CV as well. Opportunity again to sell your skills, your experiences to a potential employer. But don't confuse the covering letter with the personal statements on your CV. The covering letter is to go alongside and complement your CV, not just a duplicate of it as well. Your covering letter also needs to be tailored and specifically written to that organization. Now, I have received covering letters before with other companies' names on it because the person has forgot to re-edit it and rewrite it to send it to me. And it puts me off, but I'm quite a reasonable guy. So I'm like, it's a common mistake. But try to make sure that you tailor your cover letter to an organization. Make sure that the format is correct as well. I will try and keep your covering letter to 1 page maximum. Identify also your unique selling points. What is it that you bring to the table from an employer? And also include examples of what your previous experience can match up with this new job that you'll be applying for as well. And that's the end of the presentation. It's really short. I think I even did that in about 20 minutes, to be fair, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So that's the end of the presentation. There's a couple of extra things that I wanted to add on to this, but it does start falling into like interview tips and things like that, which is not which is the next stage of the application process. So I wanted to try and keep it just about talking about CVs and things like that. But I do want to open up the floor to anybody that might have any questions for me.
Hi, Hassan. I'm desperately trying to find how I raise my hand, but I can't find it on
That's okay.
my mobile. But is it okay if I ask the first question?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, it's Del. So I've just got 3 quick questions. The first is obviously we're focused on the BAMEU used within SLEBA. In the last 2 or 3 years, have you seen a change in the requirement in terms of their entry into the workplace and what they're looking for in CVs? So, for example, is remote working a big thing? Has there been a shift at all?
Yeah, I think so.
Employer requires.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of employers at the moment aren't too worried about degrees, especially within the last, I'd probably say the last kind of 4 years, 4 or 5 years, actually. The reason why I say that is because university is becoming increasingly more expensive to go to. And you tend to find that people that maybe want to go to university want to work specifically in that field that requires a degree. But with the rise of apprenticeships, extracurricular courses from college, different types of qualifications you can get after leaving secondary school, employers are becoming more adaptable and a little bit more flexible with qualifications. You don't have to, like, to join my company, you don't need a degree, for example. You don't need, to be a master's graduate. Those types of roles, if you want to go into law, accountancy, or whatever it might be, you might have to study that specifically. So I have seen there's been a bit of a shift with employers in terms of what they are looking for from people. Now, the job market over the last few years has been up and down because of COVID. At the moment, what I've seen is that there are more job vacancies than there are candidates available for jobs, okay? So it's become increasingly harder for recruitment agencies to go and find the right talent, because companies have realized what they need to do is to keep the good people that they've already got, because it costs them less to keep them instead of going out to hire. If they are going to hire, instead of paying a ridiculous amount of money for somebody at a senior level with more experience, what they're actually doing is looking at more of the junior market, people with potential, people with passion, people with enthusiasm that want to learn, who might not have gone to university or might not have had the best start in life, and saying, we can do something with this person. We can develop this person ourselves if they've committed, or as long as you've got to show that potential. That's what I've seen.
Okay, fantastic. And my next quick question is, obviously, SLEBA community organizations and the youth, again, how important is it to add any roles they might have within the organization to a CV? Is that important? So if a youth has planned something or X, Y, and Z.
It is important, yeah, because SLEBA is actually, it's a proper committee with proper structure. Everybody has their role. Absolutely. It's a voluntary position, and SLEBA is quite, in my opinion anyway, is quite a big organization within Bristol. It's had so many touch points with different organizations across the city and also outside of Bristol. So if anybody has ever taken part in a role in SLEBA, whether you might be finance officer, I don't know what the job titles are, but yeah, I would definitely say to include that into your CV in the, I guess, below your work experience. It's more voluntary work as well.
Okay, that's fine. And my final question is, are you available if somebody has a CV, they have written their CV and they just want a second pair of eyes? Are you available to be that second pair of eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do is on the SLEBA group chat, I'll put my email address in, my work one. So if anybody wants to send me their CV, I'll happily have a look at it. And for the first time, I can tell one of my uncles and aunties, the CV not good.
That is absolutely fantastic. That's all the questions I have. Thanks, Lord. It's been fantastic.
Thanks, Dale.
Yeah, I've got a few questions, if I might. I'll go after Siwanda, sorry.
Hi, Penina. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I kind of laugh at myself. I'm the host and I put my hand up. But I was hoping for Hassan to invite me. Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from the question that Dale was asking. So we're really trying to get our youth to be more active and to be more involved and giving back into community, like with the various voluntary roles. So one thing we want them to be involved in, like help organize various activities within the community. We will be supporting them, but will that count as a voluntary role on their CVs? Not being an executive leader, but just like be part of a committee that have formed something and deliver like from start to finish, and then they've actually get that experience of like organizing something or taking a leadership role. Can they count that on their CV as being able to do something, considering that they might be of an age where it's limited work experience, like paid work experience. So that's why I'm asking if that will be relevant.
Yeah, good question. So I would say yes. The reason why I say that is because, let's say, for example, somebody's at the age of 17. They're going to go and start applying for, just the part-time jobs whilst they're studying, okay?
Yep.
Those employers aren't going to know the ins and outs of SLEBA or the ins and outs of this institution that we're running at the moment. So it really does depend on when they get to interview, how they articulate that position. On a CV, it's not lying at all, because they have been involved in that. It's how you get the message across to them to deliver the skills that they have picked up. So for example, if I had a younger brother who was 17, and for example, he was the one who helped organize the transport for the outing, for example, he could say, I was part of the youth committee for the Sierra Leone Association in Bristol. These were my responsibilities, and this is what I did. It's really, really simple, because those skills are really, really important. Because when I was 16, when I was applying for my first jobs, I had no experience. I didn't do anything. I literally went to school and I went home, which is really strange. It was really, really strange. To be fair, I don't know how I got that job. I don't know how I got invited to an interview, because I literally didn't do any. No, actually, no, I did like extracurricular stuff at school. So when these opportunities, like in school, for example, I did things like head boy. I did things like if there was ever like a summer camp, for example, I would go to, because what that does, it builds up character, it builds up confidence, it builds up communication skills, and so forth and so forth. So these are the things that they can add onto their CV. Ski trips away, for example, I know that costs a lot of money, but I didn't ever go on any of them, but I know some of my classmates did. That would have taught them teamwork and all that sort of stuff as well. So these are little things that they can put on their CV. And to be honest with you, employers, they know that they are junior people. They know they don't have a lot of paid work experience, but what they're trying to look for is, does this person have the potential for us to mold them and shape them into the right employee? That's what they're looking for. They're spotting potential.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Penina, you can go now.
Thank you, Marion. Hassan, I think I've got maybe a few personal ones, because I'm just moving away from permanent role. I'm looking at interim and contracting roles. And that has meant that, going back at my CV, looking at things like day rates, thinking about things like tax arrangements on things like is it IR35? IR35 umbrella type organizations. But I think maybe just over the last week, just being in that industry, one of the things that I wanted to ask a question about is around the CV. Obviously is quite important, because my career has been focused more on the public sector. So I've got various experiences across the public sector. And I'm also looking at specific senior roles, maybe on a day rate, like maybe 350 to 400 per day onwards. So mainly specifically. So it's when you say that, there is more people than jobs, I don't understand how that translates to. I've made a few applications already. And even though I've been speaking to lots of recruiters, there's nobody who's coming back to say, oh yeah, there is all of this, there's all of this. So I don't know whether it is more around the timing of all of it. Around this time of the year, maybe things do change a little bit.
So there's a couple of things that can affect that. It depends on what industry you're working in.
So finance,
So finance is completely different.
Okay.
We specialize in mainly IT and technology.
Okay.
And the IT and technology market is so cramped at the moment. I'm not too sure what the finance market is like. You tend to find
loads of jobs that seem to be showing up, quite a few, but obviously there's a bigger percentage now. I'm noticing more permanent rather than interim and sort of temporary. There are some interim and temporary which are showing up at the level in which I'm looking at.
Yeah, and then the other thing that affects it is the time of year. It is a time of year.
So that
especially within the interim and the contracts recruitment market, you tend to find that over the Christmas period, they furlough their contractors.
Yeah.
Because their contractors aren't working and doing what they're supposed to be doing. They don't pay them. So they put them on furlough. So they take that time off. So for example, why would a company hire a contractor now and in 2 weeks' time they're going to say stop working. So they're just going to wait till January.
Yeah.
And also what you'll find is that this end of the year starts to become quiet for recruitment. January, there's a huge increase in demand, but then it slows down again before the financial year.
Okay.
Which is in April.
Right. Okay. So those might be specific factors. And also on the CV bit, because again, depending on the different kind of sectors, do you think that it's always that one size of your CV might not always fit all? Because if I'm been focused more on what the public sector offers as a service, and now if you move across to the private sector, I don't know whether there's any examples of what a good CV should look like that you can sort of share. I mean, there was the question from Dell about feedback, but I think also on the other side, it's also seeing what does a good CV look like, which could stop, because there's people who are now charging like more than £200 for them to look at your CV, link it to LinkedIn, and then do a personal statement, and then pass it through, I don't know what it is, like a digital system which looks at CVs.
Yeah, you're wasting your money if you do that, to be honest with you. So what I can do, I would need to get permission from my organization to get a couple of CVs. And then I get that permission, I will be able to share those CVs on the SLEBA group chat, or I can personally send them to you so you can have a look and say, this is what a good CV looks like potentially within the finance world, because our company does do finance recruitment, but I don't have anything to do with that. So I can do that as well. Yeah,
that would be really, really helpful, because I think that's what I'm sort of struggling with, because you see how people structure their CVs, and some of them seem as though they've been done professionally, but then you just don't know, because you're not opening yourself to sectors which you haven't worked in before. So you don't know what expectations are within those sectors. So if I am uploading my CV in different places, so there's a few that have come back. I've had quite an interesting influx of recruiters just calling me and saying, oh, let's do, we've seen your CV, let's sign you up. So I think I probably signed up with maybe 6 or 7 different recruiters at this time. But I think, again, I found that with some of these recruiters, it seems as though they're going like on a fishing business. They're asking me, where else have you gone? Who are you talking to? I don't know whether that is just normal in the industry.
I hate to admit it, but yeah, they do that. Now you will tend to find when somebody has come across your CV who has a genuine job opportunity for you, the first thing they start speaking about is, are you available? And also they'll just go straight and tell you about that vacancy. They'll tell you who the company is, they'll tell you what the job vacancy is, they'll tell you how much it's paying before they even ask you, where else are you interviewing? Okay. But you also have the power to say, I don't need to tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you will tend to find that there are some companies out there that do a little bit of phishing.
Yeah.
Because how they generate their business by doing that. But you will come across some really good agencies who will actually have genuine job vacancies and things like that as well.
Yeah, which is the other question, is whether they do actually have a genuine job vacancy, or whether they're just
ask them to send you the job description. Ask them who the client is. Ask them where the client are based. Just ask, because you'll be able to tell. It's really difficult for somebody to think on their feet really quickly if you just keep firing questions at them.
But they're from big companies, so you wouldn't expect that, like Michael Page, McKinsey and whatever,
It happens everywhere. It happens
everywhere. Thank you, Penina, for your questions, and I think we all learned from it. Thank you. Just for us to be aware, we've only got about 8 more minutes. So Dell, have your hand up if you ask your question.
Yes, I do apologize. It was one I had and I still forgot about it. Hassan, as a BMA community, how frightened should we be about the introduction of AI, artificial intelligence, in the whole recruitment process? Is it something we need to be worried about?
How do you mean?
So I have read somewhere I have read in certain parts that when you send a CV to a big organization, it's not actually read by a physical person. It goes through an computer process, artificial intelligence, that looks for certain keywords, looks for names that it can recognize. So for example, if I've got a very African sounding name, it might reject it. And I know, for example, the company that I work for, Civica, we do use AI to go through CVs that are sent to the company. So that's something that you have come across. And as the BAME community, that's something we need to be concerned about.
It's not something that I've come across. It's not something I've come across at all. So I'll be honest with you, I have no answer for that. Okay.
Okay, no problem at all. It might be a mess.
I don't know, but so I went to UWE the other week, and I did a short lecture to some HR students, some final year HR students, and I told them if they're applying for job vacancies, what you can probably do is, if you're clever enough to use LinkedIn or use the website of the company or Google, you can try and find who is the recruitment manager or the hiring manager for that job vacancy. You can probably try and work it out and send them a direct message on LinkedIn to say, I have applied for this vacancy. Here is my CV attached. I hope that you have time to read it. You're thinking outside of the box, as opposed to just sending your CV to a normal application through the normal application channels. So there are things that you can do just to make yourself stand out. Some people don't like it. Oh, who cares? As long as you've sent the CV, you sent a nice message to them, absolutely fine.
Okay. And talking of LinkedIn, would you advise our youth to always have a LinkedIn account when they start to look for a job? Is it an advantage?
It's not an advantage, no, not really.
Right. Okay.
It's not a massive advantage, because LinkedIn is a community. It's meant to be a professional community, but it's turned into a little bit like Facebook at the moment. Well, it has been over the last couple of years. People seem to use it as a bit more of a social media site as opposed to a professional networking site. People putting pictures of their first baby steps and people putting pictures of their wedding day. Like, who cares? This is a professional work. It's a professional platform where you're sharing jobs, you're sharing work things, etc., etc. So if somebody's at the age of like 17, probably not. You probably don't need it. They probably don't understand it yet. If they first get into their proper working world, or maybe during university, that's the point where they should probably be creating a LinkedIn profile, yeah. But, you know, if they're just looking for their first part-time job, youngsters, not really.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Well,
That kind of lead in very well to a question that I had earlier on with LinkedIn. So maybe similar a little bit with Penina's experience. So on LinkedIn, I've had like so many people. When I mean so many, that like will really send me a message, like they're interested in something they've seen that I've done in the past and things like that. And then you go to a point where you start exchanging emails and it just stops. And for some reason, sometimes it's like, did I say the wrong thing? Or what attracts you or distracts you now that you don't want to continue? So then it leads me to that question. When you talk about personal profile, you know, like the first part on your CV, should it be different to what you have on LinkedIn to that compared to your CV, or is there...
LinkedIn is more of a, this is who I am.
Okay.
A CV is, this is why I should get this job.
Okay.
Do you understand? So your professional profile on LinkedIn should be something around the lines of, you know, 10 years plus experience in this, working for the likes of this company, this company, this company, and so forth and so forth. It should be different to what's on your CV.
Okay.
And for what you said about, you know, you get lots of messages from people. Now there's a thing called LinkedIn Recruiter, okay? And it's only used in recruitment agencies as a different, so you've got the normal LinkedIn, and then you have LinkedIn, which recruitment consultants use, okay? Now this is something that you can use without clicking on someone's profile and them knowing you viewed their profile. You can send them a message without having the connection with them. And basically what happens is that they will be looking for they'll be looking to fill a vacancy, and they will create a whole long list of names from LinkedIn. and they will just fire the same message out to all of those people all at once.
Oh, so it's not me particularly they're looking for.
Sometimes
Sorry,
it might be.
don't laugh, guys. This is serious.
It was just you looked so hurt when you realized it wasn't just you.
No,
But
that bruised
I
my
get
ego a
that.
bit because I thought it was me they were interested in. I didn't know they were profiling everybody and then just see who they can fish out.
I get them. I get them all of the time as well. I get them all of the time. All the
Okay.
time I get them. And I said, the thing is though, if you're not looking for a job at that particular time, it's irrelevant. If you're looking for a job and you respond to them, sorry, I just realized I put my email address wrong in the meeting chat, so I'll change that quickly. If you are looking for a job,
Yeah.
it's fine if they've sent that same message to other people. It's fine. It is what it is. It's the same as sending an application to a job application. There's loads of other people that are going to be doing the same thing as well. So don't be disheartened by it. So yeah, that's what the recruitment world is like. The recruitment world is really intricate. It's very complex as well. A lot of people don't think it's that complex. They think it's just, here's a CV, there's a job, fill it. There's so many different factors and things we have to do in order for us to do that. And sometimes it is about sending out a message to 50 people and see who comes back to us.
Okay. That's good to know. I'm not looking,
I
but
don't
it's
do
just that sometimes when you get it, you think you're the special one. Now I know that it's just a thing. Don't laugh. But thank you. We've only got 1 more minute. If you can correct that email address. I don't know if there's any last comments or something anyone wants to say before we wrap this up.
Miriam, I assume this is not the only workshop series that SLEBA are doing. Are there any you want to give us an indication of that going forward?
Yes, thinking about it. We actually have one that is coming soon. So that will be out in our newsletter. Considering all that is happening at the moment, I think this will be like a really good one going into Christmas. People are looking into getting increasing their finances and
Saving money.
Or some might even want to you know what, life is one life, let me splash on Christmas, want to get some extra credit, look for different credit cards. So please join us on Saturday, the 10th of December at 3 p.m. We're looking at money management. We look at different ways how you can budget. If you want to get a credit card, if you're going in for a loan, you know, the different things you look at. So we're going to get an account specialist that will come in and will give us these tips and advices before you make this great investment. It might look like a simple one, but you get a credit card wherein you have to pay 39% back. Those are really life-breaking at the end of the day. But yeah, so please join us. It's going to be via Zoom as well. We'll share the links and all the information will come out. So it's mainly looking at financial responsibilities, not just about getting those loans, but with what you have, how best you can manage it really to get the best out of your finances as well. So yeah, thanks Dale for bringing that up. So yeah, there are more that are going to keep coming and we'll put them. On that note, I want to say a massive thank you, Hassan. You kind of led us to wanting to ask you to help us now on interview skills. Now we know how to write our CVs, how to do the cover letter. So we want to know how, when they finally invite us, the right things to say, how to present ourselves. You know, like the bit you talk about somebody showing up in their morning gown for a phone interview. I would just say bad network and hang up, but I guess I wasn't the one that was doing the interview. But thank you so much.
The worst thing I have never experienced that before. And I said to him, because I already had a telephone call with him, and I said, I'm going to invite you now for a proper interview. And he said, oh, I'm working late the night before, so can we make sure that it's later on in the day? The interview was at 2 p.m. And he joined onto the call and he said, sorry, I've just woken up. And he was in his dressing gown. I said, really? I just couldn't believe it. You don't turn up to an interview in your dressing gown. But you know, he's learned his lesson now.
Yeah, I don't think he'll do that again. Yeah.
Oh, never mind. But yeah, no, you guys are more than welcome. Thank you very much for joining as well. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to do another session sometime in the new year.
Okay.
About that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, the interview skills. I think we'll